Since having my fourth baby earlier this year, I am starting to feel the pull towards rhythms again, kind of getting back into a schedule, figuring out what works best for us at this stage of life. I think anyone who has had a new little baby join their family can attest that you kind of throw those rhythms and schedules out the window for the first few months, but now that he is about 4 months, I feel ready to take on a lot of my normal things that I would do before he was born. One of the rhythms that I love is getting up before my kids so that I have a little time and a little peace and quiet before all the chaos of the day to make some breakfast and also take some time for a little self-care before they're awake. Here I am making one of our favorite breakfasts. These are fresh milled flour blueberry muffins. I usually do them with blueberries, but I also will toss in whatever fruit I happen to have in the freezer. So this morning I did raspberries and blueberries, and I topped it with some delicious streusel topping. I shared over on my Instagram account that I was diagnosed with postpartum thyroiditis after this pregnancy, which is a new experience for me. I think many women actually struggle with this. Maybe it's undiagnosed in a lot of people. So I've had quite a few people asking what I'm taking to help with this. Every morning I take beef liver as well as a thyroid support supplement, vitamin C, iron, and I also take creatine. Another thing I've been taking is chlorophyll. I take it every morning, and that is for postpartum sweating and body odor, which is kind of something people don't talk about a lot, but it's definitely a real problem. And ever since I've been taking the chlorophyll, I've literally had no issues with it. I swear by it. I think it's incredible. Another thing I've been doing for my thyroid is some red light therapy in the morning and the evening, which has also been really helpful. I have always wanted to farm or have some sort of a homestead. Currently, we live in town, but we have quite a large yard, about 1.25 acres. So our goal this summer was to transform our yard into a suburban homestead of sorts. We've expanded our garden quite a bit from last year. We had, I think it was 4 raised beds last year. This year we have 8. Plus we expanded a large herb garden. Growing herbs is probably my favorite because I feel like I use them so often and they're really easy to grow also. Today I want to take you through my entire bread making routine. This is the routine that I do every single week. Recently, I have been enjoying using yeast with my fresh milled flour to create, I call it Wonder Bread, but just a really simple sandwich bread that my kids love. So I haven't been doing as much sourdough, but I do love to use sourdough for things like English muffins, crackers, and snacks. So I always start the day by feeding my sourdough starter just so it's ready and active when I need it. The way that I feed my sourdough starter probably would stress some people out, but I don't use a scale. I just add in flour and water and mix it to the consistency that I want it to be. I will say that I wouldn't recommend that with a newer starter, but my starter is very mature at this point. It gets active super quick, and as long as I make sure it's the right thickness, my sourdough seems to always turn out by using this method. This Wonder Bread recipe is super easy. I make this every week and I usually do a double batch. So it makes about 4 loaves of bread. So with 2 of the loaves, I'll just make them regular that we'll use for sandwiches. And then with the rest of the dough, I typically make 1 to 2 cinnamon sugar loaves, which is really delicious and really easy. I like these for breakfast toast and my kids are obsessed with them. Sometimes I'll also make dinner rolls or even hot dog or hamburger rolls with the rest. This dough recipe is really versatile, so you can do all kinds of different things with it. For the cinnamon sugar loaves, I find it easier to make these if you can add a little flour to your cinnamon sugar mixture. Otherwise, you can end up with some really big gaps in the loaves. Even when I've made this and ended up with bigger gaps in my loaf, my kids did not care at all. It's so delicious and it's great for breakfast. Today, I am going to show you a super fast and easy way to make your own candles at home. I have been wanting to do this literally forever. I don't know why I put it off because it's actually so insanely easy. I've been doing a lot of research about removing toxins from our home. This year, we did like a big overhaul of all of the personal care products we use. Candles were one of the first things that I had to eliminate, which makes me so sad because I love candles. Like an anthropology candle is like my absolute favorite thing. I also love like the cozy feel that a candle brings to a room. And so I was really bummed that I had to get rid of all my candles. Then I discovered that I could make my own beeswax candles at home, and it's so insanely easy. You can use mason jars to create these candles or more decorative jars. You're just going to want to fill up your crock pot with about an inch of water and then place your jars with beeswax pellets inside of the jars into the crock pot. I also like to add maybe like a tablespoon of coconut oil because this helps the candles burn a little bit longer. Another recipe that we make on repeat at our home is sourdough English muffins. I usually do a double batch of these as well, and they're so incredibly simple. It's just sourdough starter. You can use discard or active starter for this recipe, and some milk, flour. I use my fresh milk flour for this as well, and then a couple tablespoons of honey and a little salt. After I mix this all together, I usually let it sit out on my counter for about 4 hours, and then I transfer it to the fridge overnight. I just noticed that if I let the bowl sit out overnight like I used to do with my white flour English muffins, it gets really, really sour. And my kids don't love like a super strong sourdough flavor, so letting it sit out for about 4 hours and then switching to the fridge seems to work better. The next day, I just take the English muffins out of the fridge and I go ahead and roll out that dough to about half an inch thickness. And then I cut out my shapes for my English muffins and I let them sit on the counter for about 1 to 2 hours just to get a little bit of a rise. And then I cook them on the stovetop in a cast iron pan. It typically takes about 4 minutes per side to get a perfectly cooked English muffin. Doing this routine of a double batch of bread dough and some English muffins along with some cinnamon toast bread is a really good starting point for my bread routine for the week. Of course, we always add in some extra things throughout the week like tortillas or biscuits if we need them for a meal, but this is pretty much my standard routine that serves us really well. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen to see my bread baking routine for the week. If you could hit the subscribe button, that really helps me to be able to continue to make these videos for YouTube, and I will see you next time.